Why add that level of complexity and take on that risk if it's not necessary?
I think our whole life is a big risk if you think about it. So to be able to take that risk in a relationship is often a sign of the health of the relationship, that you have that level of trust, openness, support for each other's curiosities and exploration, and that you have the ability to do that as a couple.
Hey guys, this is going to be part 2 of our Naughty Gym show episode with Dr. Shannon Chavez. The first part, she talked about and demystified the issue of jealousy in open relationships. And in this part, she's going to actually talk directly to us and try to help us navigate through a couple of little jealousy issues we had lately about our attempt at separate dating.
And speaking of Dr. Shannon Chavez, she is one of the world-renowned experts that we are bringing to Hedonism Resort in January 6th through the 13th for our Be Better at Being Bad week. So we're doing a full resort takeover. Spots are filling up. You're not going to want to miss this week. It's going to be an absolute blast, and it's going to have everything that you need to make yourself better at being bad and enhance your relationship. So head over to naughtygym.com. You can book there, or you can go straight to Hedonism's website, hedonismresorts.com.
And now relax and listen as Dr. Chavez has the impossible task of helping us out. We recently decided, actually she decided, and I agreed, that we wanted to try separate dating.
Yeah.
Which we had previously said, or she had previously said, that if I ever come to you and say I want to try separate dating, you should be very worried.
This was years ago. I said that though.
Yeah. And
we've grown a lot.
And you hit me with that nugget while we were at Hedonism Resort. And but tell what brought the change on, what was kind of the impetus for you wanting to try that?
So for 6 or 7 years, well, we've been in lifestyle for almost 8 years, but for 6 or 7 years, we've been full swap, where we will, swap with another couple. And many times I leave those encounters feeling kind of unfulfilled, like I didn't enjoy it as much as he was enjoying it. I wasn't feeling like I was making connections as deeply as he was making connections. And so I about a year ago, maybe, I said, let's just take a step away from all play, because I want to figure this out. Because it started to become something where I was kind of forcing myself, like, okay, let's just power through it. Let's do it. He's enjoying it. Why am I not enjoying this? And so I'm like, I need to figure this out. Like, what's going on? Why I'm not enjoying this anymore? And we talked with a couple at Hedonism Resort who talked about their separate dating and their encounters. And for some reason, it just made sense. And it's really hard to make a good four-way connection where everybody, is feeling the same thing. Everyone's feeling connected without one person feeling rushed. And that was me. It takes me a little bit longer to form a connection with people. And he can connect like right away. He's so good at that. And so I did. I said, well, why don't we try just one date, a separate date, to see, that way we don't have to depend on meeting a couple that we both connect with. But also, he really loves the foreplay as far as like flirting, the little intimacies, like, somebody sitting on his lap and kind of snuggling, which I absolutely do not like to see. Not that I don't want him to do it. I just don't want him to do it in front of me. I don't care if he does it. I just don't want to see it. And so I thought, well, this could solve both issues. He'll get to have that. And then I'll get to choose who I want to go on a date with and feel, if I have the connection, great. If I don't, I can say no without everybody having to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And so we still haven't gone on a date, but we started the process.
That was like 3 months ago.
Figuring it out, though. Yes, exactly.
And so part of my concern with that was, in all honesty, I don't like hearing that she doesn't like seeing that stuff, because I like seeing it with her. I love to see her flirting and getting attention from men, women, whoever she's into in that moment, and for all the little small buildup that comes with heading into a play session.
Mhm.
I like to see that. And the fact that she doesn't like to see that with me worries me to some extent. Like, oh, am I doing something that ultimately is this is like some landmine that I can't see, that at some point I'm going to step on it and it's going to blow up on me? Or is it something I shouldn't be concerned about? If she's saying, hey, look, go do it, just don't do it in front of me, that is a big concern of me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been which is why when we talked about the separate dating, my preference would be for us to do it with somebody who we know and trust, people that we've known before.
Mm-hmm.
And hers was, well, that's exactly the problem. I don't want to know them.
Yeah, I don't want to know who he goes on a date with. I don't want to see her. I don't want to know her. I would rather him have his connection away from me, do his, whatever he wants to do, and come home happy to me.
And I want to know if she goes on a date with a guy, I want to know his social security number, where he lives, where he works.
Wants it all, yes.
I want to know everything that happened on the date. I want everything. And I want to tell her all about mine, and she doesn't want to hear about it.
I think you both are a great example of how you can want different things and it can still be okay, though. That sometimes we think about, well, if you want what I want, then, that seems like it would be, easier. That would be easier for us to, come up with the expectations or rules around that. But I think that kind of goes to show, we can have completely different interests or desires and what we want to know or see or even be told about, and that be perfectly fine in our relationship, because it doesn't make it any different between the two of you. Because one of you saying like, then you get to come home to me and I get to still be with you and we're in our experience and we're enjoying each other, and it doesn't have to have any impact on us.
Right.
So it's kind of bringing that erotic energy back to each other rather than it being, necessarily something that we have to observe and share together.
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. So we were talking earlier, and he was going to ask a question. So how do we get to a place where we can watch our partner and feel compersion towards them? And I was like, well, I don't necessarily feel like I need to get to that place where I feel compersion watching you with somebody. I mean, I don't know if that's the end goal, and should that be the end goal? If I don't enjoy watching him be flirty and intimate with a woman, but you
don't distance. So,
and it's not like that. I don't want him to do it. I want him to do it.
And you don't watch it going, ooh, I hate this.
Right.
It's sort of an indifferent thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. But should my goal to be, if I see that, to feel that compersion?
If you were to see it, I mean, you kind of went back. I think I want to focus on the first thing that you said,
Sure.
that I don't really enjoy it. I mean, it's not that you have any issues with it. It's that it doesn't create, it's not a turn on. It doesn't create there's no interest in that, but it's not something that you don't want your partner to enjoy. So I feel like you can still get to the compersion of being able to enjoy Scott kind of coming back and feeling kind of that, NRE or that erotic energy. And then you get to enjoy that together without it having to be something that you have to watch in order to get to that. So it kind of goes to the point that compersion can happen in a lot of different ways, that I wouldn't kind of say I got to fit into that in order to get to that place. I think that what you're describing is that you can get to that place in other ways. And that's where I would focus your energy.
Okay.
So I asked her the question. We had this conversation for probably like 45 minutes. And I said, okay, well, what if I could hand you a pill? Because I love for her to watch. I love to watch her. Yeah. And I know that doesn't mean she should have to want to watch. That's just a fancy of mine. But if I could give you a pill that took away all of that from you, that this pill made you enjoy watching me with another person, would you take the pill? And she said, yes, of course. Which in my mind meant, well, then in my mind, that meant, well, you do actually want to be able to enjoy watching me, or you wouldn't take the pill.
I would take it because you would want me to watch. And if I could take a pill that was like, you will now enjoy your husband with watching another woman, and that's something he enjoys, well, of course, that's a no-brainer. I would take it. But that doesn't, I don't think it's subconscious like my brain subconsciously wanting me to be okay with it, which I think is what you're wanting.
No, I know that I understand that right now you don't enjoy that. You don't hate it, but you don't enjoy
Yeah.
it. But it seems like that if you would take the pill, it would be an expression of the desire to want to enjoy it. Or if you, in other words, if you felt like I don't want to enjoy it, so I'm not going to take the pill, you kind of wished you enjoyed it, or you wouldn't have taken the pill.
I don't know.
I don't
But
know.
you said for your enjoyment. So I think that's kind of what's going on though, is Scott, you're sort of saying, I want you to enjoy it because I enjoy it so much. And so you're
Right.
coming from your perspective of, what it does for you and how it, the turn on, the excitement and all of that, how that's kind of wired for you. And for April, it's kind of different, right? I mean, yeah, if I could, I would, but it's not like a switch you can kind of turn on, it's either there or it's not. Maybe that can evolve over time. I do believe that, our interests and desires are always changing.
Right.
I don't think that's necessary to get there. I think that sometimes that's where couples get stuck because we're trying to create a lot of, let's like the same things. Let's be interested in the same things. And that I think what's beautiful about sexuality is the diversity that we bring to it together, because we're bringing, completely different perspectives and personalities and all of our traits, and creating a lot of, synergy with that.
Well, and that's one thing that I have loved about the lifestyle or ethical non-monogamy is it's allowed me to grow in my sexuality independent of him. And then we can bring that together. And so that's good. We don't have to like the same.
Well, and that's true.
Very rare, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's always been the goal for me. It's like first of all, I'm usually the one out in front a little bit. I'm a little more comfortable with a little more stuff. And so I'm usually the one pulling the cart a bit. I think, and it tends to seem like the men usually fill that role, not always.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think, and that's why I had to put the brakes on a little bit.
And so I've always wanted her to just if you'll just drop your guard and just open up, you're going to have fun. But that's probably the absolute worst attitude you can possibly have about it, I'm guessing.
As a partner, when you observe that, to kind of bring some light to that, because I mean, April's kind of saying you've evolved a lot in this journey, and that would be good things to highlight when you notice that kind of breaking your own guard down and stepping out a little bit to kind of celebrate those moments. Because often we don't talk about them because we're kind of enjoying so much, but to highlight that, it kind of boosts our confidence, and it does allow us to have a little bit more kind of awareness of that, like, oh yeah, look at me doing this, or
Right.
I have kind of stepped out of my comfort zone in this way, and that feels really great. And to kind of talk about that, like, how has that made you feel powerful, or what are the things that kind of make you feel really good about yourself when you're doing that. So giving a little bit of feedback and highlight to that, I think, can actually get you further to that point than kind of trying to focus on the, must be at the same place at the same time.
Right. Well, and I think that's kind of what happened when I got to a point where I'm like, I think I would be okay with separate dating, where 3 years previous, I was like, if I ever get to that point, that's a big red flag. and I've evolved, I've grown, I've expanded. But I think that scared him a little bit.
Not saying. Yeah. I wish I would have had a heart rate monitor hooked up to me the minute she said, hey, I think we should try a separate day. I bet I borderline had a heart attack. And we were on a beach in Jamaica. I should have been very calm. It just scared me to death. And because what I hear is my insecurities. I hear, I want to go out with somebody when you're not around. I framed it instantly in the most, in the most negative frame I could come up with. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
And, it took a lot of conversations, and thankfully we're really good usually about talking about these things with each other. But it took a lot of conversations for me to get from 3 years ago April's mindset to she evolved, and I never saw that process.
Right.
But it was happening internally for her, I suppose. Yeah. And so it just seemed like to me all of a sudden she has a conversation, a switch is flipped, and now I'm terrified.
Exactly. And I'm glad you highlighted some of those messages, because we start telling ourselves things that are extremely faulty and not productive. And, it kind of minimizes the fact that we're always evolving and changing. And to your point, we don't always talk about the things going on for us internally, but how important it is to talk through that process, even if it's, I was thinking about this thing, or, remember that conversation we had? So it isn't so shocking sometimes to hear, such an abrupt change. But, I think sometimes even being able to say, I'm hearing you say that. Tell me what that means. Because in my mind, I'm hearing this, which might be completely wrong from what you're actually saying. Because it may be more about April's kind of personal journey and less about the other person at all. It's more about, I'm kind of like learning something about myself, and I want to go experiment and explore. And it's about me rather than it being about another person. But the mind can kind of be, it's about the other person, or I'm not good enough, or you're dissatisfied with me. So we start going into this sort of cascade of negative thinking that can, completely stop us from, again, the compersion or joy of that excitement, being aware of that growth or wanting to actually go and explore that.
All right, well, let's talk about my insecurity.
All right.
I know mine is probably the dumbest insecurity
No, it's
possible,
not.
but Naughty Gym is starting to do well, and we hope that we're about to reach a point where it is our sole source of support. That's our dream, right? But we still don't make a lot of money. And so and multiple times we have run into people that make a tremendous amount of money in the lifestyle. It's I think a very affluent segment of the population, probably a little more affluent than the average. If you just pulled an average group out of the population. And so she's been approached by people that have a lot of money. She's had people offer to take her for a week-long trip to Paris, just him and her, which I quickly said no to.
Which I think would be a great idea.
So my big insecurity is some really wealthy man who can, at the snap of his fingers, make all of our financial struggles go away, takes her on a date and shows her a life that not only I can't show her, but I can't even imagine the type of lifestyle that person can live. And all of a sudden she gets swept up in this princess lifestyle that I can't give her. And all she's got to do is walk away, and she has this man to take care of her. Now, there's part of me when I'm saying that out loud goes, well, that's just the dumbest thing ever. But that is a genuine insecurity of mine that I think is starting to fade as we've talked about this separate dating stuff. But the instant she brought it up, that's the picture I had in my head. Oh, you want to go date super rich guys who can give you money and you might end up leaving me.
Which historically has never happened. I just want to say, but and I've constantly reassured him, I've never, before him, I wasn't into dating. I don't date for money. I don't date for status. My whole journey has about finding connections with people and authentic connections. So that superficial stuff has never wooed me or, been something that enticed me to like somebody. And so to me, I'm like, that's just absurd. But obviously that's something internally that he's still struggling with.
Yeah. So how do you work through? And again, I think I have done some work for this, and I think I'm kind of maybe coming down off of this concern now. If she had a really good connection with a guy that was very well off and he wanted to take her on a date, I don't think I would feel the panic wave that I would have maybe a few months ago. But how does a person go about acknowledging the fact that they have that insecurity and then working through it?
I think that once you acknowledge you have that insecurity, you know that it has to do with thinking about the value that it has in your relationship, right? Money is a big part of a relationship. It has a lot to do with, even our roles and to look at our kind of roles in relationship, responsibilities, being providers, all of the things that are kind of put on us as pressures in a relationship. And there is always a little bit of competition. I think especially this goes back to social conditioning with men, right? That you have to take care of a woman and, be this sort of provider, and all of the things that are kind of embedded in how you think about yourself just as in the role of a relationship. And so that is something that can always feel threatened. And we want to be able to recognize that, there, even the idea that, I think, April, you were talking about someone who's more good looking, or, these things that we've kind of learned, that there's always sort of something bigger and better, and that has been programmed into how we think about our lives in general and our relationships. So kind of knowing the source of that is important first. And then to look at too, obviously, with the idea of that being something that can feel like an insecurity flaring up, is there anything going on in the relationship that's also flaring that up that could be important to look at? So, for example, we're having financial problems, or we're arguing a lot about money. So that could be part of what could be fueling that, is that subconsciously, because we're fighting about it, it makes me feel that, you may want to go out and find something better for yourself, or that I'm afraid that we haven't been able to work through our differences and how we're seeing something in our relationship, especially around this important value that can, again, I think, be addressed through communication. Because if we're already talking about it and we know that it's an important part of what we're going through, then often we want to be able to have some sense of mutual understanding and validation for that issue. And that can definitely help, I think, ease that insecurity a bit. But often insecurities are things that we don't talk about often. So that's why I think the more we talk about them, the more secure we tend to feel in those issues, because we're able to say, even as you said, that we've been talking about it, it's becoming less of a trigger point for you. So that's exactly what the solution would be.
But full transparency, if she goes out on a guy that's completely broke, I'll feel a lot better.
Nothing wrong with a little honesty there, right?
So going back to, it shouldn't be one of the things we've said when we used to say we would never do separate stuff, whether that's separate dating or even separate room play, was that, and this could just be our perception, but we always felt like that's where we saw the most problems. We got so many friends that dabble in all sorts of different variations of consensual non-monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that's the hardest thing to manage, is the separate stuff. Mm-hmm. Is that what you see in your practice, or am I just making that up in my head?
Can definitely be one of the hardest, again, because there's so much happening and so much to manage, lots to communicate, a lot of agreements, a lot of reworking agreements as you go along. So it's not necessarily that it's what's happening outside, it's that it takes the relationship, the primary relationship, to a new level of having to open up and talk about things that you might not want to talk about, or being able to have to talk about, boundaries and rules and things that are off limits and things that may be more challenging for couples to address or even identify in the moment. So it can be, I think, a lot more management, but I don't think it's necessarily, better or worse. I think it just requires a lot more communication and trial and error. I think that's the hardest part for many couples, is that it's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect, and nor should it be perfect by any means, but that it's going to require kind of trying some things and coming back and talking about that, and then maybe having to readjust and talking about that. So I think it requires a lot of commitment. I always tell couples I'm working with, this is a big commitment. I mean, you're making a commitment to yourself and each other, but it is a big responsibility, and that every moment of the way is kind of being very mindful and aware of that responsibility. So I think, it can bring up a lot of really good issues. I'm a hero, yay, jealousy and all the issues, but I do think it does require, it kind of gives you some opportunity for growth and fine-tuning things within the primary relationship. I think where I see a lot of issues happen for couples is they're not addressing the issues in their primary relationship. For example, if we're having, issues around finances or roles in the relationship, and we're still making agreements to go and explore and date other people, and we're not dealing with that, that's where a lot of resentment and issues can come up. So couples that work through those and have a good basis are going to see better results as they go and explore different dates.
Yeah. That's one rule we've always had in place, where if things in our primary relationship aren't rock solid, we don't play at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
so
think that's
we
a
always
great
want to
rule.
make sure that we're in a good headspace with each other, and we have open lines of communication before we go into any type of external peripheral play.
Any friends that have ever asked us about opening their relationship up, we've always said that if you don't feel like, if you're not rock solid confident you're going to be sitting on a porch in a rocking chair when you're 95 with the person next to you, you better not dabble at all in any sort of open, because it's just going to magnify every problem you have. I have no doubts. I don't know if a person could ever say no doubts, but I have as few doubts as I think is reasonable for any person to have that we're going to grow old together. But that doesn't mean I don't still feel jealousy. Sometimes I feel jealousy over a thing that I loved watching 6 months prior, and then may love watching it again 6 months later. But as long as I can bring that to her and say how I'm feeling, and this is where I'm weak. She's always good at going, okay, we'll stop it. I'm sorry. We won't do that anymore. And I always, if she comes to me and says, hey, what you were doing over there kind of bothered me a little bit, I feel like I need to defend myself. Like, wait a minute, that was within our rules. I didn't do anything wrong, because I've always been a very defensive person. And you said something earlier where you were talking about how a lot of times you just need somebody to listen to you and validate your feelings. I'm awful at that. And so I've got to get better at that. So, yeah.
So thanks, you fixed us.
Yeah. You didn't tell her where she was wrong, really, but
But it does take practice. I mean, even tolerating the emotions of a partner who's saying, hey, this isn't working for me. Often we think we did something wrong, and that's our default. But many times it's being able to say, be curious about it. Hey, you're kind of telling me this, and allow that person to really share what that is. Because often we don't really know what it is that we're feeling until we hear our own words.
Right.
So to be able to, just be curious. That's my favorite word for couples communication, being curious about what you're feeling, about what you're thinking, and not feel like we have to solve anything. I think that's important. Often there's such few problems that are solvable in our relationships. Most of them are what we call perpetual problems, which mean, they're just personality traits and the differences in how we see the world. And that's the beauty of our relationships. So being able to just kind of say, all right, I'm seeing it this way, and it's completely different than the way you're seeing it, but I'm curious about yours. I want to know about that. That helps me understand you more. And that's what I think allows you not only to get to compersion, but to really have empathy and practice empathy in your relationship, especially sexual empathy, to be able to have that sense of, being able to enjoy and understand a partner's pleasure template and what their interests are and how they function in that space.
Right. Well, and I think when you bring two people together who are raised completely different, they handle conflict in completely different ways, and then to get them to communicate about something that is so, like, most couples can't, and so that's where someone like you comes in clutch, because you can help them navigate that bumpy road, and open up and find resolutions to that conflict and open the dialogue. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that you do.
Definitely, and less is more with couples communication, kind of getting to the root of our message. What are you feeling? It's usually what I'm feeling. I felt hurt. I felt disappointed. I felt jealous. Just being able to name it is so validating within itself. So to be able to hear that.
So I'll ask one final question. We've asked this before of people. We feel like, an incredible relationship. We really do. A lot of people say that. We've had one in 8 years that we can name one actual fight. We bicker sometimes, but it's always minor stuff. If that's the case, if we have such a great relationship, and this goes for anybody, really, why open the relationship up in the first place? Why add a layer of complexity, a degree of risk that isn't necessary for happiness? Nobody's going to say, hey, everybody should have an open relationship. Why add that level of complexity and take on that risk if it's not necessary?
It's not necessary, but you're also capable of going through it. The fact that it's, risks and challenges are part of human life. I feel like we come into this world, sort of ready and able to handle it. I think our whole life is a big risk if you think about it. So to be able to take that risk in a relationship is often a sign of the health of the relationship, that you have that level of trust, openness, support for each other's curiosities and exploration, and that you have the ability to do that as a couple, that those insecurities don't create a level of, I don't want us to get out of our comfort zone or do anything to, shake or rattle this foundation. I think if anything, that shows a couple that's continuing to evolve and grow. And that can be what I wish every couple has at some level in their relationship. I think that's the only way we truly are in definition of what a relationship really is. It's a partnership. It's about kind of two individuals navigating a world together on the same path, but you're two individuals. So I think that, it doesn't have to be complex or challenging. I think it's about kind of embracing that as a partnership, which means that, even as you said, your communication, your lack of conflict in your relationship, you have the skills and ability to do that. So why not allow yourself to see what other places that you can go? And as you said, there's a lot of personal development going on at all times in a relationship, even at different points. So supporting that together is a beautiful thing.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. And I this is probably, I shouldn't say this, but I think that at least 90% of the strength of our relationship is due to me.
Right.
All right, that's not true at all. That's not even close to true. Okay, well, good. So
I love the humor, though. That is also an important skill in any relationship that is going to be exploring anything.
Also, yeah, anybody that knows us well knows that was total BS.
But that is the beauty of this kind of relationship. And I said it earlier that we're both allowed, we have the freedom in our relationship to grow independently, to heal from past wounds independently. And that makes us stronger, that self-growth and self-awareness and continual moving forward.
Exactly. I love this quote. Esther Perel, she wrote a book called Mating in Captivity. Excellent book. But she basically said, every relationship has many beginnings and endings. So that's an important way to think about our constant evolution. We're kind of going through a lot. You're not the same people you were yesterday or even 10 years ago. So it's important to kind of be on that journey. Are we going to be growing together? And that's usually when couples either grow apart or away from each other, but to be able to do it together, honestly and openly, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity within that. And I think
I've always said that.
A lot of fun too.
I feel a sense of empowerment knowing that we can try things and take risks based off our mutual confidence in the foundation of our relationship. It makes me feel empowered knowing that we can do things that a lot of people can't, simply because we love and trust each other so much.
Exactly. And breaking out of the mold that we've all been taught about how relationships should function, what's healthy and everything like that. I mean, what you two are doing is what I would call the healthiest form of relationship, designing a relationship that works for you. No one else's rules. You're coming up with your own rules. You're reevaluating, you're checking in. And that designer relationships, I think that is the way to go. And that's what makes us the happiest.
I like that, designer relationship.
Yeah, that might be a fantastic keynote address at Hedonism.
Yeah.
Happy to talk about it. Yes.
So January 6th through the 13th, you're going to be joining us at Hedonism II Resort in Jamaica. And we know you're going to be talking and doing workshops. We haven't even dug into exactly what that's going to look like yet, but we're so excited that you're coming. People are so
excited. It's going to be a great time.
They're going to benefit tremendously from you
absolutely.
being there, and we're excited. So tell people how they can find out more about you.
So you can find me on social media at Dr. Shannon Chavez. DrShannonChavez.com is my website. I've got lots of great articles and blogs. So definitely find me online and say hello.
Yes, and we'll put all of your links in our show notes as well. So
Excellent.
find you there.
Well, thanks for being on here. This was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we cannot wait to see you in Jamaica.
Sounds good. And jealousy is healthy. That's my final word.